He was also known for his generosity. One day he showed up to work very pale and freezing, without his jacket. As it turns out, he had given it to a poor wretch on the way to work. Even at work, he never gave up saying his prayers or making the sign of the cross at mealtime. The wartime rations sounded pretty disgusting. A steady diet of potato soup or something they called gruel, which is like a porridge of sorts, and it was like the normal meal. And it was a banner day when they got a hold of some horse meat, and they would chop that up and cook it up in a goulash, and the workers made like a banquet of it. Wojtyła, something else you young men could listen to and learn from. Wojtyła was privileged in that the women in the kitchen would cut him an extra large slice of bread because he had a reputation for being modest, intellectual, and a very pious, well-bred young man. He would exchange his vodka coupons for contraband meat, bacon fat, and other foods, or use the coupons to buy clothes. He did these things to provide for his depressed father, who seemed to be losing interest in life. On February 18th of 1941, Carl's father had fallen gravely ill a few weeks after Christmas, and he was bedridden at home and unable to take care of himself. Around midday, Wojtyła stopped to pick up some medicine and then went over to a friend's to pick up lunch to bring to his father. When he arrived at home, he had found his father dead. His friend that accompanied him witnessed him cry out, "I wasn't there when my mother died, I wasn't there when my brother died, and I wasn't there when my father died." After the last rites were administered, Carl kept an all-night vigil over his father's body. During the vigil, he pondered his future and his vocation. Witnesses unanimously agree that the shock of his father's death brought on a crisis in young Wojtyła's life. His father's death drove him deeper into mystical and philosophical reflection. During the next year and a half, Carl continued to work at Solvay, although he was assigned to a less strenuous task, like I said, of keeping track of dynamite and ordnance. But he also, on the side, began acting in plays that they would put on with an underground group known as Studio 39. He often played the lead role, and many thought he would pursue a career as an actor. And remember, back in high school, when we last spoke, he had also done some acting and been in some plays. So even though some folks thought he would become an actor, in the fall of 1942, after a long discussion with his confessor, Father Figowitz, he went to the home of the Archbishop to announce, "I want to become a priest." So in the early days of occupation, the Archbishop had established an underground seminary to ensure the Polish Church of a steady flow of candidates to the priesthoods. The Germans had banned anybody from entering the seminary once they took over. Anybody that was already in the seminary could continue to become a priest, but no new seminarians were allowed, so they had to do it basically underground. When Wojtyła entered the ranks of the secret seminary, he found himself plugged into a carefully organized system. Each student was assigned a professor who supervised him individually. Classes were held in convents, churches, and in private homes. The students were instructed to keep their studies secret and to maintain outwardly secular routines, not to arouse suspicion. Archbishop Sophia kept special watch over him, inviting him to serve Mass in the private chapel. Sophia liked him, and Wojtyła looked upon him as basically his third master, after Taranowski and Father Figowitz. He continued to work at the chemical plant, and when time permitted, he prayed and studied while he was at work. Said that the night shift was the best time because it was less busy and he could find more time to pray. I found this part really interesting. He was often pelted with oakum, which is like a caulking material, or some other refuse while he was praying. So basically he's trying to pray and people over there throwing rocks at him and different things. Said he was unswayed. They often referred to him as the little priest. Two books that had a major influence on him were the Treatise on Perfect Devotion to the Most Holy Virgin Mary by St. Louis Grignon de Montfort and Natural Theology by Father Kazimierz Weiss. So amidst the boilers and pipes at the Solvay chemical plant, a philosopher pope was born. Polish resistance uprising was crushed by the Nazis in early August of 1944. On August 6th, also referred to as Black Sunday, the swastika and the Gestapo went door to door rounding up all men and boys. Over 8,000 in total were rounded up and sent off to the concentration camps. Wojtyła and the family who shared his basement apartment hid in silence. Wojtyła prayed first on his knees, then stretched out on the floor in the shine of a cross and continued to pray for what seemed like an eternity. The German soldiers, in their haste, who were going door to door, did not see the door that led down to the basement, so the family with him were spared. After this event, the Archbishop Sofia decided to gather the remaining seminarians and invited them to come seek refuge in his palace. The Nazis had kind of left that hands off. So Wojtyła carefully negotiated through deserted streets, carrying only 2 notebooks, eventually passing by a German guard who kind of looked at him and didn't pay him much attention. And then he was able to enter into the palace safely. Sophia announced to the young men assembled, "I am your rector. We shall put our trust in God's providence. No harm will befall us." He instructed the young men that if the palace was searched, they were to say that they were priests. He arranged false documents for them and issued them old cassocks, some too big, some too small, some that reeked of tobacco. They just had to make do. He also had Wojtyła's name scratched off the list at Solvay to avoid searches by the Gestapo. Poland was then liberated by the Soviet Red Army in early January of 1945. So basically you had Germany would get it and Russia would get it, and it kind of went back and forth a few times. Sophia sent his seminarians into the cellar and began his way for the Red Army by praying in his chapel. 2 Soviet Army majors entered the palace, found the seminarian nuns in the basement, and announced that they had been liberated. Then they asked the crucial question, "Have you got any vodka?" The Archbishop's driver pulled out a bottle, and the 2 officers proceeded to fight over and nearly drink the whole thing. After the war, Wojtyła rejoined the university to continue his studies, basically picking up where he left off when the Germans invaded. His marks put him near the top of his class. He had continued unsuccessfully to join a Carmelite novitiate at Zerna. Instead, Archbishop Sophia had plans for Wojtyła to become a parish priest. Father Karl Wojtyła was ordained on the Feast of All Saints, November 1st of 1946, and celebrated his first Mass on All Souls Day, November 2nd, 1946. His old teacher, Father Figowitz, served Mass as what they referred to as a manuductor, which is an elder priest who guides new priests during the celebration, and said they would be there to steady him during the consecration for the power that actually flowed through him. Poland now had to learn how to exist under the communist policies of Joseph Stalin, who said that fitting communism to Poland would be like putting a saddle on a cow. The population of Poland was 95% Catholic, and the communists were not as successful at containing the church in Poland as in other countries where priests and bishops were arrested and jailed. After serving 12 years as a parish priest, Wojtyła received a telegram while he was on vacation that he needed to report immediately to the Polish primate's resident in Warsaw. The cardinal proceeded to inform him that a letter was received from Rome naming Wojtyła as the auxiliary bishop of Krakow. Wojtyła replied without hesitation, "Where do I sign?" This was the first time that the cardinal had been bypassed in the appointment of a Polish bishop. The appointment came directly from Rome. It didn't sound like he was too thrilled about that. In Wojtyła's life, there had always been a guardian angel that seemed to push him forward at just the right moment. He was consecrated a bishop on September 28, 1958. Less than 6 months later, Bishop Wojtyła received an invitation to attend an ecumenical council called by the newly elected Pope John XXIII, the Second Vatican Council, or Vatican II. It was during the proceedings of Vatican II that the future Pope came into his own. While he didn't play a crucial role at Vatican II, his thoughtful speeches earned him notice among his peers and earned him respect. The young bishop also got his first taste of the politics involved in conducting church business at the highest levels. He didn't necessarily like or agree how things were done politically at that level, but he understood it and learned to work within the system. Pope Paul VI was elected upon John XXIII's death in June of '63. Paul VI became another one of Wojtyła's spiritual fathers, offering him a living model of how a pontiff might make his way among the church's pressure groups and affirm his own supremacy at an opportune moment. In the history of the church, it is seldom possible to say with certainty why a particular cardinal becomes pope. One cardinal very close to the process and with a profound knowledge of the curia believes that in some mysterious way every pope chooses his own successor. Wojtyła was named cardinal by Paul VI in 1967. Thereafter, their collaboration and affection towards each other intensified. Wojtyła was named the 4 Vatican congregations: clergy, Catholic education, liturgy, and Oriental churches. Through these and other actions, Paul VI indicated his preference for 2 men: Albino Luciani, the future John Paul I, and Cardinal Wojtyła, the future John Paul II. The 2 cardinals that Pope Paul VI showed the most preference to became the next 2 popes. And so it was that after 8 ballots on October 16, 1978, Karl Wojtyła, better known as Pope John Paul II, became the first non-Italian pope in 450 years, thus setting in motion the renewal of the Catholic Church and the end of communism in Eastern Europe. God bless you.
God bless you.